Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club's Best Bet Seminar. My name is Frank Scatoni, and I am joined each week by a special guest to discuss the best betting opportunities on Sunday's card. Just a reminder, as I say every week, this is not a traditional selection show. Not going to talk about every race. We're just going to look at a few specific races and wagering strategies that offer the best opportunities on the card. If you're watching live, feel free to leave us a comment or ask us any questions. We got to a couple of them last week. We'll do it again this week if we have time. If you can't watch the whole show live, it's also archived on Del Mar's Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube pages. So let's get right to it, and let me introduce today's guest. This man and I go way back to 1995, the mean streets of New York City. You know him as an author, a podcast host, a media mogul, and a man about town. Please welcome my very special guest, live from Saratoga Springs, Peter Thomas Fornatel. Pete, how's it going over there?
Things are good, man. Thank you for that kind intro. I'm usually the one giving the glowing superlatives on the way into the show, so I really appreciate
role
the
reversal
show
today.
That's right. We're here in the Paddock Bar at Saratoga, but really excited to look at the racing out west today. Hopefully we can find the folks a few winners, and always fantastic getting to do some work with you, my friend.
Yeah, I loved it when we got on about 20 minutes before the actual live broadcast. You're talking to one of your buddies, and all I overhear is him telling you about some crazy egg salad sandwich story in a heavy New York accent. And I go, wow, I feel like I'm right there back at Saratoga. It's the best.
Get that muscle memory. You get to start twitching a little bit, flashbacks to your old life. But hey, no one can question the sanity of the move to go from here. Now, we're lucky right now, but check back in a few hours. It's meant to be pouring rain. Meanwhile, let me take a guess. 72 and sunny?
It will be once the little marine layer blows off. Yeah, it's still a little early yet, so it's a little chilly, but yeah, we'll get 72 and sunny. So, I think it's kind of silly that grown men and women get into arguments over which place is better, Saratoga or Del Mar, because to me, both places are incredible and have their own special charm. Now, you, as someone who spent a lot of time in both places, tell us what you love about Saratoga and what you love about Del Mar.
Well, it's a great question, and I agree. To me, when people get in, and sometimes nasty conversations,
yes,
especially on Twitter, who knew that people would have nasty conversations on there? But I want to just throw up my hands and say, can't they both be great? So I'll tell you what I think is great about Saratoga. Up here, for me, the tradition, the racing, the vibe of the town and the place, the fact that the racing industry comes together and bringing in all the different circuits into one circuit. Now, granted, Del Mar's had some of that flavor this year with the ship and win bonuses and whatnot, but year in, year out, to see the best of the Kentucky circuit against the best of the New York circuit, it's special. And also just the feel of the town, the ability to go to the races and then walk a few blocks to wherever you're staying. It's pretty magical. And I can remember being up here with you. Gosh, it might have been back in, I'll date us here, Frank, with apologies in advance, to the 1990s, when we were just, new racing fans and going to the races at Saratoga and walking home from the track. And one of us saying to the other one of us at one point, I want to do this every day. You go back to the place, you get the grill going, 6-pack of beer, you break open the form for the next day's races. And that's, the whole town is integral to the Saratoga experience. And I think that's true of Del Mar too. It's just a very different vibe. I mean, the weather, the people, there's plenty of great racing. If you cherry pick the top racing at Del Mar, it's absolutely fantastic. And then the whole area. I just love North County, San Diego. I get there as often as I can on vacations. Was just out there before the meet started. It was actually hard to leave right before the racing was to begin, but it's just a wonderful place, and I get there as often as I can. But until we master this whole being in two places at once thing, I got to choose, and I got to go with the place where I own a house. So there you have it.
There you go. Yes. And I remember, just going back to what you said, saying, hey, why can't we do this every day? Well, here we are, 20 years later or whatever, and we're lucky enough to be able to do this every day. I'm at Del Mar every day. You're at Saratoga every day. I know in the fall, hopefully you'll be out here for the Breeders' Cup, so you'll be at Del Mar every day that you're here. We've been very lucky and fortunate to be able to cover and enjoy this great sport that we love so much. It's really a blessing. So I want to Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that's very well said. It's an incredible thing to be able to do. And one thing that I love about the racing as it is now, as opposed to when we were getting into the game, and we were able to we meet random people, and we're so hungry for knowledge, and you ask whoever's sitting on the train next to you about how things are at the track. Now, one of the good things about Twitter and social media and broadcasts like what you do and what hopefully we do over in the Money Media Network is to create an atmosphere where questions are welcome and there's a community and we can help each other out and get people on their horse playing journeys, whatever those may be.
That's great. Yeah. And I totally get that. Using Twitter actually for positive things instead of negative things. But I want to get to your handicapping process for our audience in a minute, but it's been a long time since we've done a show together and caught up. It's been a minute. So why don't you just tell us what you've been up to the last couple of years? Because you mentioned In the Money Media, and it'd be cool to have your perspective on what's been going on your side of things.
Absolutely. So we started this podcast. I'm going to grab a chair. Hang on one second. I decided I was going to sit in the shade. I was getting horribly backlit over there in the sun, when the sun came out from behind that cloud that's coming back. But so I work for Daily Racing Form. We wrote a book together many moons ago, and I developed a relationship with DRF. And at some point, they had the idea to essentially do a sequel to our book, as we hear Sam the Bugler in the background. Nice. How's that for some atmosphere?
I like it.
From the Paddock Bar at Saratoga. And I ended up working for the Form, covering the contest scene. And one day, Matt Bernier, who had also just started at DRF at the same time, and I were having a conversation, and we said, why don't we do a horse racing podcast? Well, that podcast eventually became split off from DRF and this little media company, In the Money Media. You can find us at inthemoneypodcast.com. The idea is to cover every aspect of the horse racing industry. We have shows that are much more focused on the breeding side of things, the ownership side of things, player development stuff, shows specifically aimed for new players to get them up and running on their horse playing journey. And then, of course, a lot of daily analysis, written content as well. And it's turned into a lot of fun. And I get to work with a lot of great, incredibly talented people.
Yeah, I think what you guys have done is absolutely incredible. You've built a nice little empire of creating very good content for every level of player, right? So that's really important. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because you offer a lot of handicapping information and wagering strategies and on the podcast and in the write-ups. Let's talk about your handicapping process. There's so much information out there these days. There's a lot of white noise. Can you kind of walk our audience through your specific approach from a handicapping perspective, and then maybe talk a little bit about you look at from a macro perspective in terms of pointing out specific wagering opportunities when you're looking at an entire card?
There's a lot to unpack there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
At my base, I'm a figure-oriented player. I try to use speed and pace figures to understand how races are going to be run. So typically it starts with the pace and goes from there, trying to find out who I think is going to get an advantageous trip, etc. That's the bread and butter of my handicapping. And that is then informed by a lot of other things, especially trips and an understanding of biases, which you can use to find. You're basically looking for situations where those raw figure type plays, those the pace plays and the final figure type horses are better than they looked or worse than they looked from their previous race. And that actually dovetails pretty well into when you talked about trying to identify wagering opportunities. Those really come when I think I have some piece of information that is not being properly priced in to the market. And that is what you're really looking for and where you find opportunities. So, I was a little out of my comfort zone. We picked some plays for the show today, and these are things that I'm definitely planning on playing. In a perfect world, you've got that market information before you have to take that plunge, and especially things like coming up with the specifics of dollar amounts. What you want to do is see where the market is and then come up with the way that you want to attack it. But it's always good to game plan and hypothesize where there might be opportunities, so then when they do turn up, you're absolutely ready to pounce.
Right. So when you're looking at that and you do isolate a couple of plays, you want to build a wager around a horse, right? You either want to get alive to it in a double, you want to maximize the trifectas or win, whatever. So are you looking at all different kinds of wagers? Do you gravitate to one specific wager? What do you do when you isolate a key horse that you really want to build something around?
It's all situational, as so much of this stuff is. I'll lead with this. I have nothing. Everybody, wants to play the pick 5. They want to play the pick 6. There's nothing wrong with the pick 1. The win bet is still where I handle the most of my money by far, and I'm not against the idea of betting 2, sometimes even 3 horses if the value is right in the win pool, and try to put my money in that way. I want to try to express my opinion and find that edge in as simple a way as possible. But sometimes you'll find situations where you have horses that you like, that you think you have some sort of angle or opinion on, and they're all in the same sequence. And then at that point, I feel like you're leaving a little bit of money on the table if you don't try to attack a pool bet like a pick 5 or a pick 6. That opinion could be very simple. I think this horse is going to run better than their odds because I have some of my private figure maker buddies who have the last race much faster than the published figures. Or it can go the other direction too and be a horse that I don't like. I know, I watched that race. I know this horse was going to get beat and slip through the golden rail, and it is incredibly dressed up at this point, and one that I want to take on. In that case, I might use 4 horses in a race where I have an opinion, because that opinion simply is that the 8-5 favorite isn't going to hit the board.
Right. A lot of times, when you find a situation like that, you're looking for the vulnerable favorite, the horse that you don't like, that the public's going to overbet. Those are the best opportunities. And I would say to every horse player out there, when you look at a race, I start with the favorite and say, is this a legitimate favorite or not? And if it's a legitimate favorite, you could probably move on. If it's not a legitimate favorite, you dig deep and you find a way to maximize your opinion in that race against that horse. So I also want to go back and talk, because you mentioned about maybe doing a couple, sometimes you might do a double win bet in a race if you really don't like a favorite and there are a couple of price horses that you think are overlays. What do you think about the whole fixed odds situation that's going on in Jersey? Do you think that's something that will catch on and maybe, change horse racing?
I sure hope so. I think it has the potential to really be the killer app. And I don't want people in the industry to look at it like a disruptor in a bad way. We've got a great case example with what happened in Australia, where the introduction of fixed odds betting led to pool betting doubling over the course of 10 years. Wow. The two can work really well together. But in terms of educating players, especially players coming up gambling in a sports betting world, fixed odds just offers so much that we need people to be paying attention to, in terms of the ability to know exactly what price you're getting, and to simplify the game too, where you don't have to worry about constructing exotic betting tickets when you're a new player. That's a whole skill in and of itself that can take years to learn. I like the idea of being able to have value on a favorite. That's not something that USA horse players really get to do very much anymore. And I think what you said was completely accurate. A lot of times, live favorite, move on. And part of that is because you just don't know how much of what that horse's price is going to be in the end, and it just adds another variable. I've made some of the best bets of my life, through friends in England, etc., when you can get 11-10 on a horse that's supposed to be 4-5. You can make your living on that differential. And I think fixed odds has the chance to expose our great game to another world of people. And I think once people get hooked, especially because, surely there'll be limits on what you can win with fixed odds. I heard some reports it might be 1,000 or 2,000 a day per bookie. Once you get the bug and you become a horse player, you're going to want to chase the biggest scores the game has to offer. So let's educate people and get them involved through fixed odds, and then have them go on and tackle the more difficult bets. But right now, it's just, as we know, very difficult sport to on-ramp up into. And I really think fixed odds betting can be a fantastic way to market our sport, and just a great new betting opportunity. I hope they succeed. I'm looking forward to helping them out.
Yeah, I think exotic wagers are great, but I do think they burn a lot of players' bankrolls, because a lot of players out there aren't betting the wagers maximally or in a sophisticated way where they can get the most out of those exotic wagers, and they lose. You lose so much that you burn your bankroll. But with fixed odds, one handicappers out there, one thing Pete and I used to do when we were first starting out, we'd look at a card and we'd go over every horse and we'd talk about every horse in a race. And we used to always lay a value line on that horse. What price would we bet that horse at to win? What is the fair value of that horse? And, 10, 15 years ago, you could get away with doing that and playing the horse to win on the tote. Today, you try to do that. The horse is 8-1. He ends up going off 3-1. Your value is sucked right out of the win pool. But with fixed odds wagering, you can at least have a little bit of an advantage if your value line is out of whack with what the fixed odds are. You can, it'd be nice to know what price you're getting when the gates open.
It's mission critical to be able to do that kind of analysis, and I highly recommend. I wish I had more time to do value lines now. I rarely have time to do it technically and with a spreadsheet and making sure everything adds up to 100% anymore, but I'm always doing it internally.
Yeah, intuitively. You kind of have a feel for what price the horse is going to be.
And trying to make sure that what your return is worth the risk that you're putting in. It's at the end of the day, it's not a game about picking horses. It's a game about picking prices.
Yes. Well, we're going to get into the races that you like today, but before we do you have any action going on in this race at Saratoga right now?
No, I didn't bet. I bet the second race at Saratoga, got brutally snapped at the wire, and decided that I would sit a race or two out. I'm interested in a little bit later in the card, especially. Well, we'll see. We got to see what happens with the weather here. I do believe the later part of the card is going to be off the turf, and I always like to take an extra look at those races because horses can get mispriced, but you're getting a little bit of the action, a little bit of the vibe here at the paddock bar. I don't know if you can hear the people hollering at the TVs behind me, but it's an easy winner and the cheers have stopped.
Okay, well, it's nice to hear Imbriali's voice. I miss him from the old Aqueduct days a long time ago. But anyway, let's get to the races because I know people are chomping at the bit to hear what you like today. I know you like a few races. It's a 10-race card. The races you like just so happen to line up back-to-back in doubles, so we'll talk about some wagering strategies. Doubles, one of my favorite bets. We're going to start in race 2. It's one of 6 maiden races on the card today. It's a little bit of a weird card. There's 6 maiden races, and it's one of 3 2-year-old races. Okay, so we got 3 2-year-old races as well. It's a maiden special weight for 2-year-olds going 5 furlongs on the lawn. The rails are at 18 feet. The morning line favorite is one of 2 Simon Callahan runners, and in fact, both of his horses today are fillies versus the boys, including the morning line favorite, number 6, Urban at 5-2, first-time starter who cost $375,000 as a 2-year-old in training earlier this year and attracts Rispoli. I thought this race was tough because you've got a bunch of horses who are training at San Luis Rey. 3 of them are trained by Peter Miller. I couldn't get a real feel for it from looking at it and from the workout reports, but obviously you have some insight to offer. So why don't you take us through race 2?
I'm more interested in race 3 in terms of where I'm going to have my opinion. My thought, though, was I felt like I had enough angles on 3 of the runners in this spot that I want to try to get alive to all 3 of them into the horse that I like more in race number 3. And just looking through the field, there were 3 that stood out to me, starting with one you alluded to, the number 6 Urban, this $375,000 filly against the boys. We'll start with that filly against the boys bit. I think with young 2-year-olds, horses making their first start, it can actually be an advantage. I've heard horsemen talk about how fillies can be easier to get more fit first up. And at this time of year, especially, I think that's true. They're lighter framed, and you can often see some pretty good performances. So I don't think, I'm sure if there was a race that had filled against fillies, they probably would have gone there. I just think it's a sign of confidence, though, that they're willing to go ahead and strike while the iron is hot. Gainesway Farm and ownership group, I respect. Sounds like Connections think very highly of this one. Not a lot on the female pedigree, simply because this is the first foal to race, but the dam had raceability, and Quality Road needs no introduction. I definitely want to have plenty of number 6 Urban on my tickets, but I'm not willing to stand alone in a race that, as you point out, has a lot of different ways to go. I thought that the 7 Bombs at Cocal was interesting. Hit it a bomb, off to a very good start, even with first-time starters, which isn't always something you see with a horse that I think the progeny are going to be better going longer, typically. But 5 for 20. The one sibling was a winner on the turf. I think this is one I want to include. And then the last one I wanted to mention is number 2, Time to Party. I love this pedigree by Cantheros. Fantastic first outsider, fantastic turf sprint sire. You mentioned Peter Miller, always very dangerous with his 2-year-olds, another who needs no introduction. As you were talking through the race, I was realizing there's some others you could surely make cases for, but I was just going to try to lock it up with those 3 numbers, 6, 7, and 2. And the strategy that I like to use in these spots, now normally we'd have the double probables to look at and we could carefully craft the bet so that we were alive to the same amount if any of these 3 won. Instead, since we don't have that tote information right now, I just took a little bit more of a guess and based it on my opinion and weighted the bets accordingly. So hopefully we'll have a chance to get out of race 2 alive and move on to race number 3 where there's a firster I'm very interested in.
Yeah, I'm going to show your doubles in a second when we talk about race 3, but I want to talk a little bit about looking at the probables and weighting your bets accordingly. It's so important to write down what the probable pays are going to be and then figure out how you want to weight them based on your opinion. Don't just play the same amount for the same horses, because if you like one horse more than the other and that horse is paying less, you have to have it multiple times more than the other horses you're including. So we'll talk a little bit.
Yeah. Just to piggyback onto that, it's so dependent on what your opinion is. If what I'm saying here, where I don't have a strong opinion, I want to get through the leg kind of thing, that is the 100% right approach. At the same time, let's say you like one who's a price and it's like an opinion of yours that you like that horse. Don't worry about having it the same with all 3 runners. Use your opinion in that spot, and maybe you have it where you're almost just saving and getting your stake back or doubling your money if one of your backup wins, and then you have a much bigger amount to score out in a bet like the double if your top pick wins. So everything you do wagering wise needs to be closely tied to your specific opinion in that race, and you definitely don't want to. It's a mistake I've made too often, which is why I wanted to underline it. So I will very often not have enough on the longer price, thinking, I can win the same if this favorite and this long shot I like win. Right. In my experience, you're better off taking another % of your bankroll and putting it on that longer shot. Just simple risk and reward. And just because it's a double doesn't mean you can't score out if you bet it right.
For sure. I mean, we can talk a little bit about the tournament that I was playing in yesterday. We had a $200 double. We had it 25 times, and that put us up in the top 10.
That's how it's done.
Yeah, the double's a really good bet, and I like it. So I'm going to put Pete's double plays up, and I'll introduce race number 3. It's a maiden special weight. This one, a 5-furlong dash on the main track. Morning line favorite is the rail horse, number 1 Pinehurst at 5-2, trained by some guy named Bob Baffert. He also has number 5 N-Bar at 3-1 in this race. I know you're probably looking elsewhere trying to beat the Bafferts, and here will probably be overbet. Talk about race 3.
That was my thought. This is a sort of a double opinion, where there's a horse that stood out to me as a firster, but there were 2 horses I wanted to beat, and they were the Baffert runners. And you know how this story can go. You end up trying to beat a top trainer. It's plenty of times they're going to end up kicking sand in your face. But there are real reasons. This isn't, I'm just going to try to beat the favorite because I want to beat the favorite. There is logic here, and part of it has to do with the rail. Now, I know the rail's been better. I mean, I should be asking you this. You watch a lot more than I do. The rail doesn't seem to be as awful as it was.
More fair. It's been a lot more fair. Whatever they did to the track after opening week, which was all outside, you could not win from the inside opening week. So look to bet those horses back who struggled from the rail. It's been a lot more fair.
But that said, I still don't love it, and I don't love it for Pinehurst. I pulled the number the other day, and it was something like the rail in sprints was still something like over 28 or over 29. Still terrible.
Yeah. And then you have a first-time starter breaking from the rail. So
exactly, and Mike Smith, he's obviously a great jockey, but I don't think of him as somebody who's going to be like super aggressive necessarily down in there. It feels like there's a really good chance for Pinehurst to encounter some difficulty. And then when you take a look at the other Baffert runner, I mean, the horse seems to have a lot pointing in this direction, but Brody's Causes stats with first-time starters they're just not thrilling. And they're not thrilling enough to the point where I'm willing to take a little bit of a shot in this race and oppose both of these Baffert runners. The one I like is number 2, HASKELLED. Not just because it's a hilarious name, surely given after this year's Haskell and the money cost vis-a-vis the DQ. It shows a little bit of a sense of humor, which I do appreciate. But I do like Rispoli out of the gate, and I like these Practical Joke babies. They've been running extremely well, 5 for 13 with first-time starters. And this dam, one of the things I love to look at in maiden races that I think is underrated, and it's never been easier to do this than now. I don't work for them anymore, and they're not even paying me a dime at the moment, but I got to give a shout out to how cool the DRF Formulator new breeding tools are, where it's interactive look at the dam and all the siblings, and even the top 20 progeny of the sire. You can see all the PPs with a couple of clicks. It's really cool. And I really like to look for the dam that's been extremely productive. And this dam has dropped 4 winners from 5 starters. I think HASKELLED is an interesting item. I don't have any word on how the horse is training or doing or anything like that. I'm just going straight off the paper here, but I think this has a very live look in race number 3, and that's what I decided to key this double around.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got that bullet work coming in, 4 and 47 and 2 from the gate. Fastest work of the day out of 110 horses. So obviously the horse is sharp coming into the race. You're getting one of the top jocks in Rispoli, and you're bound to get a good price because the 2 Bafferts will probably take the most money. So I'm going to go ahead. Pete likes number 2 HASKELLED in race 3, morning line 4 to 1. I'm going to go ahead and put these doubles up again from race 2 to race 3. As you can see, Pete has weighted them. $50 double 6-2, $30 double 2-2, $20 double 7-2. He is subject to change based on the probables. I'm sure Pete will tinker his bets based on what they're coming back. So I will also post this on Twitter once the seminar is over. But let's move on because I know Pete wants to talk about 2 more races today. Later in the card, we'll jump to race 8. Going to start another double here. This is a Calbred $20,000 optional claimer, non-winners of 1, contested at 5 furlongs on the turf. I analyzed this race for Del Mar's online contest race, and I thought it was an absolute scramble and by far the most challenging race on the card. I happened to land on 2 horses who I thought would benefit from a hot pace, but these turf sprints typically won on or near the lead, so I'm going to need some luck. The morning line favorite is number 5, in Vronsky style at 3 to 1, a D'Amato trainee who's coming off a layoff and facing winners for the first time. I think the barn's been a little chilly, so I went shopping elsewhere. But I know, Pete, you want to probably talk about in Vronsky style and maybe another one in this race. What did you think?
That's right. I think sometimes when these turf sprints, when they look crazy, and you can make cases for a whole bunch of horses, sometimes it's almost like a double reverse bluff or something. I'll dial in to the horses I think look to be the fast, earliest, and are going to get the best trips. And that horse for me is number 6, Katamako, who ran a very quick figure. It's a long layoff, but we have a work tab that suggests to me that number 6, Katamako, might be ready in this spot. I don't mind the switch to turf at all, and I like horses. I like dirt horses. If I think they can stand up on turf, I love having that dirt experience. I think sometimes there's a toughness that dirt runners bring to them when they go to the green, an angle I've heard Paul Matisse talk about at great length. On pace figures, I think Katamako could be in front, and I think could be tough to peg back. I mean, I get it. There's a lot of ways to go, but I was actually going to try to get away with Katamako and then also to try to use in Vronsky style, who I think will be suited by this cutback. I think sometimes people underappreciate the specific distances of turf sprints. I think going from 6 to 5 for this runner who ran inefficiently fast earlier, I'm hoping in Vronsky style can sit just off the pace this time, settle down a little bit with real pace in front, which you'll see horses do from time to time, and hopefully have a little bit of finish. So I was just going to try to get through with the 2 at the top, with 2 who I imagine will be at the top of the market. Nothing too clever for me, and I'll certainly be curious to read your analysis. And since I like one so much in the next leg, really not much harm for me potentially in throwing a couple others in here as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt Catamaco. I mean, that is sharp dirt speed, and sharp dirt speed could transfer very nicely to the turf. And there's also a really good story. I don't know if you know this about Catamaco, but when this horse was younger, he was either bit by or swallowed like a black widow spider and had an anaphylactic reaction.
Oh my
and
Lord!
Kristen Mulhall had to do some like crazy tracheotomy or something, like makeshift tracheotomy, and actually saved this horse's life. This horse was near death, and she saved this horse's life, took her time with the horse, did the right thing by the horse, brought the horse back. And as you can see by that debut race, I mean, what an awesome performance. Just made the lead and never looked back and won at 14-1. So you're good to the horse. The horse is good to you. So it's a really cool, heartwarming story. And I would love to see this horse run well. I personally thought that there was a lot of heat, like I said in my little intro spiel there. So I was looking at 2 horses to come from off the pace. But if you want to find out who I like, you're going to have to go read my analysis on dmtc.com. But you definitely wise to listen to Pete with his 2 plays. Let's move to the ninth race, which is the featured race of the day, and which will hopefully close out your double that I put up on the screen there. I'll put up on the screen there in a minute. It's the featured race of the day. It's the prestigious Clement L. Hirsch, grade 2 for fillies and mares, going 8.5 furlongs on the main track. Some really nice ladies in here. This is a terrific race with a lot of talented horses. Morning line favorite is a deserving favorite. Number 7, She Dares the Devil, at 7-5. Brad Cox Invader, who is well-traveled and a proper grade 1 winner. She has sharp early speed, and she should get a good trip from the outside post. I think she's closing out your double, but tell us why you really love her today.
Yeah, I think she's in great shape. Now, I hope I'm right about this. I don't want to say this and be wrong. I think they upgraded this race to a grade 1, didn't they? Do you have that in your I've got that in my racing
You're
form.
right. Well, did I say it was a grade 2? My apologies. It is a grade 1. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
Grade 1 action on a Sunday, which is fantastic. And in She Dares the Devil, as you point out, we have a true grade 1 animal. Apparently training up a storm, for whatever that's worth. I like to hear that information always. It's not going to make me not like supposed workout info isn't going to put me off a horse. It's not going to put me on a horse that I don't like on paper. But when that type of information lines up with a horse who makes all the sense in the world anyway, I can start to get a little bit excited about it. And I think you nailed it. I mean, it's going to be just a beautiful trip for this runner. Breaking from the outside, has the speed to make the top and go on with it. Has also shown the ability to sit and finish when that's required. Looking back to that Kentucky Oaks run. I think that She Dares the Devil is just going to take all the beating in this spot. And I think as time goes by, nothing wrong with as time goes by, might be the best American Pharaoh we've seen on dirt. But I think there's a little bit of a class test going up against a beast like She Dares the Devil on the outside. And I think she's going to make the market for me, at least with this opinion. There's a couple different ways to approach it when you have a race like this, where you've got 2 runners that on figures really lay above the field. You can say, okay, I'm going to try to lock it up and find my opinion elsewhere. Or you can say, this is where I'm going to take my stand. And if I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'm pretty confident in She Dares the Devil based on everything I'm hearing about how she's training and her body of work. I think she might just be superior to this field and be able to get the job done and cash out this little double for us.
And as you can see on the screen, I put it up there. Pete weighted the doubles accordingly to his opinion, with the 6 Catamaco to the 7 for more than the 5 Inbronsky tiles to the 7. But again, subject to change based on probables and Pete charting out his plays. I know you have to go. You got a busy day ahead of you at Saratoga. I want to thank you for taking the time. But real quick, I want to ask you a little bit of a strategy advice. I'm playing in the live bankroll tournament. Yesterday was day 1. I have about $6,700. I'm in 8th place. Unfortunately for me, the leader has $85,000. What a day he had, $85,000. But second place only has like 12 or 13,000, and they pay out. The best prizes are top 5, but they pay out top 10. Do I try to catch this guy at 85,000, or do I just try to play for second place? What would you do?
How top heavy is it? What's the difference between first and second?
Well, yeah, first is 35,000 plus BCBC and all that fun stuff. Second place I think is only 10 grand. So there is a pretty big discrepancy. But there other prizes as well.
I mean, if you had a really strong opinion, you could go for it. But when you
tap out.
Game theory wise, though, you're probably better off trying to. I would look at what prize you want to get. If it's top 5 BC or something, I'd look at what that fifth would be and plot a course to get there. I mean, that's probably the right thing to do, because I feel like unless you can cold, I mean, hell, if you can cold punch something and get there, like that, why not take a shot? But you don't want to get in a point. I'd be more tempted to grind, and to grind up to there, I'd probably have to get my bank. At some point, my bankroll is going to be, let's say we have a good day, 30, 40. And then at that point, you're risking a lot. To the marginal value of that extra 35K becomes debatable. So I think it makes more sense to look at that prize table carefully, figure out what the prize is you want to get, and then, be aggressive to get to that amount. And then, hey, if you have opportunities to play a kill bet or two, there's no harm in that. But my inclination would be to plot a slightly more conservative course, just from a risk and reward point of view when the lead is that outsized. I'm sure other people play differently, but that's where my head goes. Yeah,
this Craig Seidler absolutely crushed it yesterday, and hats off to him. I mean, what a day! You put up 85 grand in one day off a $3,000 bankroll. Just incredible. All right, well, that wraps it up. I'm going to let Pete go. I want to thank you so much for joining us from the spa. It was very cool to see the background there and hear Imbriali's voice and all that atmosphere. I really appreciate it. Thanks to everyone for watching. I'm going to post Pete's plays on Twitter, so if you missed it, I'll put them back up there. You can check out my daily analysis on dmtc.com. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Scatoni SureShot. As I always like to conclude, good luck to us, and let's make some money. We'll see you next Sunday, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks, Pete. Take care.